My name is Martin McGuire, and I lived in Quarry Hill flats from 1950 to 1973. And I'm here today because a friend of mine, Terry Pickles, who's written a book on Quarry Hill flats that you could find in the Leeds Central Library, he would have been here today, but he's had his voice box removed, and he would have found that very difficult to come here and talk about his reminiscences, and he asked me to step in for him, which I'm gladly doing. Right, the first picture I want to talk about today, it's got Ibbotson House in the background. Now, Ibbotson House was sited at the top end of Quarry Hill Flats near the Woodpecker Junction, very close to where Quarry House stands now. And in this picture, there's me on the left, my sister Magdalene on the right, and an unknown baby. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the baby. But if you look behind us and up to the top right-hand corner, you can see my mum on the veranda. Well, I think it's my mum, and she's always looking out and making sure we were safe, which we were, because of a very safe environment. And many a time from that same veranda, I would shout up after she'd shouted me in for my tea and say, "Mum, throw me down some sandwiches, I don't want to come in." And I got jam and bread sandwiches nearly every day of my life. And they had a song about me, but that's for another day. Now, this is a famous picture. This is how friendly it was. And if you look to the archway on your right-hand side, which is the leading out to the Woodpecker Junction and onto York Road, you see a horse and cart coming in. And this guy used to bring fruit and vegetables on his horse and cart. And he always had balloons for the kids, you know, so it was great when he came through. Your mum and dad would come down for your fruit and veg. You see all the kids there. This is early 50s. I wasn't born till 1950, so I'm probably not in that shot, but I reckon my three eldest siblings, John, Joe and Maria, would have been on that shot, I reckon. Our flat, again, is above the kid at the top of the slide. If you go in there, one above him, the one veranda and window from the top. So you had your veranda on the left, the main room, which is above his head, and then our bedroom there to the right with the window box. Yeah, and that was my bedroom when I was a little boy. So it was wonderful seeing this shot. Over to the left is Ibbotson House, and if you look where the third child at the bottom of the slide is, third child from the left, if you go past him, that was like a shed area, and in there you could leave your bicycles and your prams and things of that nature. And we used to play in there on the wet days and things like that. And in fact, we used to store our newspapers in there. We used to save newspapers for charity. Well, when we used to tell people it was for charity, but it was for us really. So we could buy football kit and stuff like that. And we used to store our newspapers in there and take them down to the newspaper guy in Mabgate. And we'd save for weeks and weeks and weeks and come back with about 1 and threepence, about 7p. Now, this is Jackson House, and this is the Marsh Lane side of Jackson House, the outside of the flats. And Marsh Lane, still there today, runs down to the bus station and under the arches and head off towards the Royal Armouries and places like that. And this lad is Colin Quigley. Now, he lived at number 90 Jackson House with his 2 brothers and his mum and dad. And he was the youngest of the family, was Colin, but he was a year younger than me, but we were great mates. I still see him today, a lovely lad. He's got children of his own now, but that's Colin Quigley. Now, this is outside the flats again. This is on Monyon House. It had a green hill at the back of it, and to your left is York Road, and there's St Patrick's Old Church, still there today, used by the West Yorkshire Playhouse for storage. And beyond there is Eber Gardens. It's in the 60s, is this picture, because at the front are the 2 boys. On the left is a lad called David Fletcher, and I'm there next to him. Now, David, I still see his wife. She serves fish and chips up in the Clifton Fisheries, up in Airles. Now then, the 3 girls. On the left is Dave's sister, Susan Fletcher, and on the right is my sister Magdalene. Now, in the middle is a girl called Priscilla. Now, I think her name was Priscilla Thompson. I might be wrong, but she was right, and Priscilla, she could look after herself. She was as hard as nails. Now, look at this. This is a famous photograph. And who do you see straight away? The girl in the middle with the eye patch, and that's our Maria. Now, this was taken in the early 50s. I think it's such a wonderful picture. I think it was taken by a professional photographer. It's not just a snap. But, you know, look at the children there. It's sensational. And this picture's taken outside Monyon House again, on the back of Monyon House. So you've got York Road over to your right-hand side. If you look to the very top right-hand corner where the flats go up a slight bit, that's Neilson House, and that's where our family lived when I first was born in the 1950s, but because I'd come along, we needed a bigger flat, and that's why we were moved up to Neilson House. Now, when we lived in Neilson House, they used to have parades that came down York Road to the Eastgate roundabout and then up towards the hedgerow. They lived on the 3rd floor in Neilson House, and our Maria was looking out, and our Joe, who was a year older than Maria, he thought she had a better view than him. So he wanted to get a better view, so he just pushed her out the window. And he ran back in and said to me, "Mum, our Maria's fallen out the window, Mum." And my mum ran down the stairs, and our Maria's running up the stairs, saying, "Our Joe's just pushed me out." Well, you can imagine the scene that followed. But, she must have bounced when she hit the grass, so that was lucky. And she's still alive today, which is great. Now then, here's an old shot here. This is my mum on the left, Angela McGuire. She was known as Angie. And I don't know the lady with the baby. I'm sorry, next to her, I don't know that. But I'm then next with my elbow on my knee. That's me. And that's our Magda next to me. But behind me there is a lad called George Ibbotson. Now, they had a big family. They lived in Neilson House, 2 floors below us. They lived just above the arch. Now, Mum and Dad liked to go to Woodpecker now and again. And the kids, because in those days, they had older brothers and sisters who were in the house, so they were safe. But they used to sit outside their bedroom windows on top of the arch on lovely summer's evenings, waiting for Mum and Dad to come home. And when they saw them, of course, they used to get back in the flat because they'd have got murdered for being out there, because it's about 3 floors up, it's quite high. And but that's my mate George, and him and Colin Quigley were my 2 best mates, and still around today, Right, well, we're back now to outside Monyon House with St Pat's in the background, and that's the 3 girls I mentioned earlier. So you got Susan Fletcher on the shoulders of Priscilla Thompson and Magdalene McGuire. Well, they were very, very friendly girls, and had a great relationship together. But I think they've grown apart like everyone else has, I'm afraid, But they're the 3 girls there. Wonderful memories of Quarry Hill. The flats were named after dignitaries and famous people of the time or of the past. Now, this is really the beginning of Quarry Hill Flats. This is number 1 Jackson House, because they decided to go alphabetically around the flats. Now, not everybody knows this. So if you start there with Jackson House goes round on the curve where it then joins Neilson House, which is near the Woodpecker Junction. Then we had 5 blocks of Lupton House. Then we have a number of blocks that belong to Monyon House. Then we have 4 blocks that have belonged to Neilson House, and they're down near where used to be the City of Mabgate pub, and Mabgate itself is there. Then we have the wonderful sweeping arch of Ostler House, probably the most photographed part of Quarry Hill Flats, and it's down near the bus station and Eastgate, and that's a wonderful sweep. That was magnificent architecture, no doubt about it. Then we have 4 blocks of Priestley House, which are dead in line with Neilson House. Then we go into the centre and we have Rhodes House. Now, Rhodes House is where all the shops were, and the wash house. That's what we used to call it, the wash house. It probably had a posher name than that. But the wash house was a magnificent place. You ask any child growing up in Quarry Hill Flats, they'd go with Mum to the wash house, even the lads. They wouldn't do any washing or out like that, the lads. They just wanted to play, and you're in and out the wash. You wouldn't get away with it today for health and safety, but in those days, nobody bothered about things like that. And you'd play in the wash house. You could play hide and seek and tig. Nobody minded at all, And it was a sensational place. And the dryers, you'd pull out these big dryers, and the heat. But, you couldn't hide inside one of them. You'd never live. They wouldn't allow that. But, it was a wonderful time. And like I say, then you go into the row of shops that you got from the top side of Rhodes House, and all the shops were there that you needed. And then opposite the shops was Savile House. Now, this is where we had a restaurant. We had a restaurant in Quarry Hill Flats. Savile Restaurant, very posh. We never went. We couldn't afford it. But, some people did. And in between there were lovely gardens and lovely grounds. Then we come to Thorsby House, which is like an L. And then, very symmetrical L, is Victoria House, named after the Queen. Then we have Wright House. And the last one we have is York House. That's how they came about the names, which I thought was a rather nice idea, alphabetical. totally safe environment. You know, there were nobody had cars. You know, even in the 70s when they were, you know, starting to decline, there were very few cars inside, although they did allow for cars to come through and park up. Safe environment in that respect. You were close to everything. We were Catholics, and St Patrick's Church was just, you know, through Kitson House Archway and across New York Road. The school next door was St Charles's. All the Catholics went there. All the Protestants went to St Peter's, which was down near the bus station side. So you know, all your spiritual needs were met within walking distance. I remember, you know, it was funny. My sisters used to go out the archway in Kitson House and go over to the church, and my dad used to watch them, make sure they were going. And they'd go in the church, this entrance, and come out of this entrance. Well, they didn't go to church for years, but they didn't tell him because he was such a devout Catholic, and it was funny. And then they'd walk down New York, you know, and they'd be taking the wine, but it wouldn't have been the blood of Christ. It was the wine in the city of Mabgate pub down at the bottom, or even into town, you know, to the bars there. So that was funny. The markets, the town itself, I remember my mum, you know, he had 7 of us to bring up, you know, and my dad worked hard like they did. And my mum would go out shopping every day, and she'd leave me, being the youngest, with Maria, who was the eldest girl. And Maria just let me get on with myself, you know, she wasn't really bothered. And my mum would come back with the shopping for the day, a pair of earrings. Well, my dad would come in and say, "What's for tea?" "Well, I've been very busy, love, you know, and I haven't been able to get in town." And she'd come back with a pair of earrings instead of a loaf of bread and some meat or whatever. They put a football pitch in between Thorsby House and York House with proper goalposts. Can you imagine? For years we'd been playing with jumpers for goalposts like all the other kids, and now all of a sudden we had a proper pitch. Oh, it was wonderful. And we'd invite teams from other parts of Leeds to come and play us and play for a trophy or whatever, you know. And we thought we were great, but anyway, we were good, but we weren't that good. But that was a lovely memory as well. And then if you went down to Neilson House and through the arch there to Mabgate, that's where the rag and bone man was. So you'd take all your rags and stuff like that. And I remember our John, he used to go every day with rags, and my mum and dad wondered where he got them from, and they were giving clothes away that were ours. And well, he got a good hiding, you can imagine, but he was taking these proper clothes, not rags, proper clothes, and getting pennies for them, but he thought it were great. But there were the rag and bone man, and near where the rag and bone man was the beck, and it's still there today. Obviously the beck runs into town, and we used to go and play down in the beck. Can you imagine all the disease and the vermin and everything? But it didn't bother us. We used to play, and we used to go actually under the tunnel through the city of Leeds in the beck area, and with torches, and what an adventure that was, you know, and come out the other end. I remember once racing a lad called Michael Gallagher. We raced actually through the beck, not at the sides, but in the beck itself, in the water. You know, water came up to your thighs, and we raced each other all the way from the Mabgate area right up to Meanwood. Oh, what days, what days. And then at the side of St Pat's Church was St Mary's, big black church, been knocked down now for years, but they're still on the ground of the Church of England. But we used to have our bonfires there, and Colin Quigley's dad, Joe Quigley, he was always in charge of the bonfires. But again, you know, health and safety, you'd little kids going up and putting potatoes in the fire, you know, and then waiting a few minutes and going back for them and getting them out with a stick and things like that. You know, you wouldn't get away with it today, would you? You wouldn't get away with it. Oh, and then I remember once when they decided the foundations weren't quite right, so we had access to underneath the flats. Well, can you imagine the adventures we got up to, crawling around under the flats and all that. And then of course you could get to the flats on the top, on the roof, if you went to the top floor. Some of the doors weren't always locked. You get up on there and have fun playing on there. I remember once in our house in Kitson House, and we were playing hide and seek, and our Magda had it, and she knew every nook and cranny. There was no way you could hide it in there. You couldn't do it. She'd always find you. But so I decided to hang outside the window, 5 floors up, and I hung outside the window. Thought, well, I'm not cheating, because my fingertips were inside the flat. And well, a crowd gathered below, didn't they? Because it was right on the bottom of York Road. It was a very busy area. And this copper shouted, "What's up, you all right, lad? What's up, what are you doing?" And it were only then that I started to panic and realise what I'd done. But anyway, I managed to clamber back in, and you can imagine when the copper knocked on the door, came up the stairs, knocked on the door. My mum were in the house at the time. She were in the kitchen doing her work and all that, and she didn't know. She knew we were playing hide and seek, but she didn't know what I'd got up to. But I got a good hiding that day. So they're just some of the memories of Quarry Hill and my time there.